Hello, Matt. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Are you based in Seattle?
I'm in Minnesota.
Oh, okay. Cool. How is the weather over there right now?
I mean, right now it's 19 degrees, but sort of in the normal Minnesota fashion, it's pretty nice. We have snow on the ground, which I like snow, and there was a little bit of flurries today, but nothing too crazy. We got a bunch of snow a couple days ago, which was our first like major snow.
Is that typically when snow get in, like beginning of December?
Yeah, it's been changing over the years, kind of like everything else. But normally, yeah, we'd like I remember growing up, we'd have all December, Christmas would be snow everywhere, and like the last 5 or 6 years, I feel like it's taking more into like January, February, and then March is usually our like snowiest. It's getting warmer at that point, but we usually get a ton of snow in March.
Oh,
But for us, it seems like January and February are like the really, really cold. Like you can get to the negative 20s and 30s, and when you don't want to go outside, that's when it gets bad.
yeah, I'm based in Seattle. When it's like 40, I already don't want
Yeah,
that.
that is funny. Whenever we go on vacation somewhere where it's kind of warmer and but it's cold that day, like we're in shorts and stuff. People are like in big, huge jackets.
Yeah. Yeah, Seattle just got our first snow as well. Like typically
Oh,
it
awesome.
doesn't snow till like January, but this
Okay.
year it snowed beginning, no, end of November, beginning of December. But they
Okay.
just kind of melt after a couple of days.
Yeah. When I was young growing up, we would get snow sometimes like we had big storms in October, at the end of the year. Like, so it's
Summer.
now it's shifting, but like, yeah, it's common November-ish to get some flurries and stuff for sure. So we have like 7 months of cold and just a few months of warm.
Yeah, it's amazing. Everywhere is so different.
I know.
Raymond is responding to your comment about wearing shorts and in jackets.
That's actually where we were, believe it or not, when I was referring to that. We were in California and it was hot still, but yeah, people were in huge parkas.
That tracks.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. So we have two Matts on the call today. And Matt Luker, you are from the CSE team, is that correct?
Yep. Specifically I work with Kara and Yomi, so faces you've seen on here. And the other Matt is we're working with his team along with Noel, who's been on the call a couple times. I'm trying to find the list, probably maybe RJ's on as well, but so we're working in conjunction, Raymond, in conjunction with that team to assist with the Ratify work.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm so excited for everyone. And Raymond is in your project as well.
So I'm this engagement, yep, but like from an alignment perspective, so I'm trying to find a list of people so I can say the names who are actually here. Which I just don't see it for some reason. But yeah, the other Matt that you're seeing, Raymond, and then the faces you've seen before would have been Noel and RJ, probably. I think, not sure if Jeffrey joined, but that would be another name you might see as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
Jeffrey Fang, Joshua Phelps. Essentially, we're part of like a dev crew, and so we hop from project to project. Whereas Matt's on the specialized like platforms team.
Got it. Yeah, great to see you all on the call.
Likewise, thanks.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
And Matt, thank you for the introduction.
Yeah, I just found the participant list, so got hidden on me.
Yeah, it takes some adjustment between different UIs.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Just trying to move some windows around so it's nothing is blocking. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, cool. And before we start, are there any items people like to add to the agenda?
Yeah, this is Jimmy Ray. I just want to get clarification on the testing that you guys want me to do. I sent out a request today to get somebody to give me clarification that now, since the notation RC1 has been released, does that change anything that needs to be tested, or, and I haven't got any clarification I'm aware of. So just want to throw that out there.
Got it. I will make a note. Yeah, we can cover that when we talk about the beta 2 release that we're gonna cut a branch for today. Oh, looks like I'm not signed in. Yeah, we'll make sure to cover that. Thank you, Jimmy. Okay, we're just gonna quickly start with our.
Is it okay if we add another item as well?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Our team was discussing bring up removing the pass-through mode for the execution mode, because it seems to be outdated and not doing anything anymore. So I want to bring that up to the group.
Oh, okay, interesting. Yeah, we can cover that as well. We actually have some other internal scenarios that would use the pass-through mode. So in the open source project, we don't see any execution path on the pass-through mode, but we will have a need for that in probably next year. So we can follow up on that, Matt.
Okay, we'll at least take the notes and I can bring them back to our team as to why it's there.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Cool. So going through the orders, Binbin has a test PR open, and I don't think this affects the release today. So when he's ready, we can merge the end-to-end test. And I see him pushing some updates yesterday. The latest changes looks good to me. So I'm just gonna double check with him before we merge. Akash, there's 2 PRs for fixing Open SSF and CodeQL. Are they both in the approved, ready to merge state?
Yeah, so I think for our release for beta 2 today, CodeQL definitely should go in. So I think that's ready to go. OpenSSF is not a need. If we want to merge it in, we can. I'm still fixing a few other issues, so if we want, we can hold off on it. So.
Okay, so this one is ready to merge, correct?
Yes, yeah. I'll update. Oh, okay, that works.
Yeah. I've learned that like when it's like if we don't merge it in time, then there's like it quickly gets out of date, and then we'll have to rerun the end-to-end test, which will take a while. So we'll let this run, and then after this call, we can merge this.
Sounds good.
Okay, and we'll leave OpenSSF open, and I believe. So for this PR, signature artifact type for notation RC1, I see Binbin's end-to-end test also updated the artifact type. But I guess once we merge Noel's PR, Binbin can update the end-to-end test PR.
Yeah, so we do need the Noel's change because of the artifact type changes. He's updating basically as some.
Yeah, so it looks like I have no permission to update. So I have to ask Noel to update the base branch, right? Cool. I'll leave a, I can leave a comment later on. I do have a question. So with this change, he pointed out like this is a breaking one, like the artifact type in Ratify should match the artifact type of the signature. So is this just specific to notation, or is this also a rule that we should follow for cosign? Because last time we had this discussion, like we had a made up string for cosign artifact type. So I wonder if we should also get the official string from cosign and like just maybe remove the one that we made up.
Yeah, that's a good call out. This is anyway used in the verifier, right? Just to bind the verifier with the artifact type.
Yeah. Yeah, so now we're kind of just saying, okay, the artifact type that we're using to bind the verifier would need to match the official string.
Yeah, I think I can reach out to somebody on the cosign side if you want.
Yeah, sounds good. So do they have a string for the artifact type? Like,
I think so.
or they do?
I'm guessing so. I'll check. I'll reach out to Jason Hall, who can help.
Yep, sounds good. Thanks, Ajay. Okay, there's one more on the list. This one is to fix the markdown.
Yeah, I can quickly talk. So Daniel's a new member on our team.
Okay.
He was looking to, get involved with us. So he kind of wanted to go through the process, and he found some markdown changes. So he thought this would be a good sort of first entry into seeing how it all works.
Yeah, great. And I believe this one is also good to merge, but the branch is out of date with the base branch. So
Okay, I can reach out to him.
yeah, thank you, Matt.
Yep.
Okay, moving on to our discussion items. We're planning to cut for beta 2 after this call. I guess we will make sure no artifact type change is merged before we cut the branch. Are there any other PRs we should merge before we cut a release?
I think that's it. That's the last remaining one.
Yep, cool. So after beta 2, our next release is RC1, a Ratify RC1. So we're targeting end of January. Luis, do you want to talk about what we are planning to release in RC1 and like how we're doing the branching management?
Yeah, so after this beta, so the main goal of beta 2 was to have integration with Notary RC1, adding trust policy and trust store. So for RC1, what we want to do, and I don't know like how much I can talk about internal projects, but basically we want to work with other internal teams in here to make sure that end-to-end works with Notary and with other with our AKS offering. So what we're trying to do here is basically cut a release that's going to contain very like selected changes, while at the same time keeping sort of the main branch open for other teams and other people that are like getting changes in. So we should probably have a conversation on when would be a good time to cut the RC1 release branch out. But again, like this, I don't want us to block any other like changes on the main branch. I just want us to make sure we are trying to cut down the amount of churn we are having on RC and only have there the essential work that's needed for our internal end-to-end. So so yeah, so RC will probably let's have a conversation and when it's a good time, and then we can communicate when we're cutting down the RC branch. At this point, it's still TBD. Does that make sense?
Yeah, just to confirm, Luis, we are going to create a RC release branch to reduce the churn.
Right.
And we're going to merge back to main branch after we release RC.
Yes. I mean, no, basically what I'll try, I would like to have dual merges, dual changes. So whenever, like for those changes that we're trying to, so let's have everything merged into into main branch, but at the same time have anything that's going to be needed for the RC1 sort of like also merge into that specific branch.
I see.
Yeah, so the support that we're adding for RC1 should be also on main branch.
Got it. Yeah, thanks for the plan for RC1, Luis. Any questions or feedback?
Just a clarifying question. Is the plan to just have 2 PRs, like one into main and one into the RC branch for the appropriate changes? Or would it be more handled by once it's merged into main, a cherry pick is then off of main and pushed into RC branch? Or have you not gotten that far in formalizing the process?
I'd say, well, we haven't got that far yet. I would say cherry picking is fine, but I want to have more discussion on that before actually like formalizing on a process here.
Okay. Yeah, we definitely should have a little documentation on the strategy. Yeah, we will have further discussion on that. Yep, sounds good. And Jimmy, you mentioned about the verification needed for the beta 2 release. Can you bring up the question again? Sorry.
So you're getting ready. I mean, you're getting ready to cut a beta 2. So my verification, I guess, doesn't matter. I'm assuming someone else did trust policy and trust store verification. I'm not sure if they did, then I'm not sure what I was supposed to be testing because, you know, with any internal efforts, we're not quite there yet. I'd have to, you know, do some more work. So my question would be, is someone already verified for beta 2 that the notation RC1 works with trust store and trust policy? Because that's what I thought I was on the hook to test. But since RC1 came out earlier today, I reached out to find out if that changed anything.
So we have done verification. So basically, while the release just came out today, the changes needed for integrating Ratify with the Notary RC1 have been on main branch for a while. So our team has actually like verified that RC1 is compatible with beta 2. However, kind of what we were asking from your side is if there were any internal projects that you're working on that would require this integration. We've heard that you wanted to have support for trust policy and trust store, and so basically any internal projects that you're working on in AWS that would require a trust policy and trust store support would continue working.
Okay. All right. So yeah, and there, yeah, it makes sense. And you know, obviously there are, but they actually have additional dependencies with you know, a plugin integration that we had discussed probably sometime in mid-November, I think is the last time that I remember talking about it. So what I'm getting to is that my testing it sounds like, you know, my testing was going to be specific for what we had going on internally. And I wasn't ready to do that before beta 2 release. So I guess it'll just, have to follow between beta 2 and RC and RC1 end of January.
Okay.
Which, by the way, I'm going on parental leave here at the end of this week for the last 3 weeks of the year, so I'll kind of be out of pocket.
I see. Yeah, I think some of the some of the ping was because I think who was it in Banin Rao was pushing hard for us to get the changes. So we assumed that there was already some sort of planning in place, or like they wanted to do some planning in place. So maybe you want to just, I don't know,
Yeah,
follow up with that.
I was working with them last night
Okay.
and this morning. So yeah, I'm well aware of what they're trying to do, and yeah.
Okay. Well,
I'll see what I can do in the next 3 days, but there's nothing I can do before the beta 2 gets cut today. It's just not possible for me to get it done by then.
Okay.
My assumption is you're going to cut a release right after this meeting, right? So, I mean.
Well, we just have one pending change. But
Okay.
yeah, the plan is to cut down today. Now, just let us know how that, like, the validation works, and we can be flexible if like things completely broke for you.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think so. I mean, here's the plan.
Not for beta 2, but for like a next release.
Oh, okay. All right, good. Yeah, then
Yeah.
I'll let you know. I mean, my immediate testing is going to be just with trust policy and trust store against our internal test environment, just to make sure that that works. And then the next thing will be with the plugin integration.
Okay.
Jimmy, I see you have raised a discussion issue related to plugin development. I pasted a link to Noel's walkthrough about like how you can build the plugin externally and kind of copy the plugin to the Ratify default plugin directory. Is that an example that like a path that you can use?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the path that I planned on using. I talked to Akash about that earlier. My concerns were more about long-term and tight coupling between any plugins and Ratify. It seems like the way that we're currently doing it, the plugins have to reside inside the Ratify image because they're binaries, and there's no real easy way to get one process space to call it binary from another process space. I mean, people have been successful doing it, but it's not a supportable solution that I want to go use. So I mean, having the plugin binary inside the Ratify image, then it becomes a race condition as to when this image gets released and when Ratify image gets its next release. And so I was just wondering if anybody had thought about that, and if we were going to, how we were going to handle it, so to speak. I mean, with respect to how customers, like if a customer really needs a plugin, are they on the hook to build Ratify themselves? And are vendors who release a plugin, are they going to also release a flavor of Ratify that has that plugin in it? I mean, that's the part that I'm trying to get my head around primarily.
Sorry, if Susan, you have anything to say, go for it. Okay. I was just gonna say the group of people who I've kind of brought in to work. So on this call right now, it's Matt and Ray and Matt. We've kind of been delving into different options around that. And that was actually part of the reason why there is an existing suggestion to make have a gRPC protocol option for plugin execution. That being said, Noel has actually done a lot of research in figuring out like updating the Helm chart or using Customize to update the Helm chart. There are ways that you can, I'm not saying it's pretty, but there are ways you can do it that are a little bit not as much as what you're talking about in terms of responsibility for owning Ratify. So I will, Ray or Matt, do we have any plans, or have we put in any documentation surrounding how we accomplished that and the notes on the exploration phase?
Yeah, we do have, let's see who's on. I think maybe Matt was in that group when we did it. If not, I can look it up. There is a repo that was created that has a README that talks through sort of all 3 different ways to set it up and kind of how they all work. I can track that down.
So we can.
So are we talking about like being able to store the binary in a different container and call it from another container, or are we talking about like having a gRPC daemon in front of the binary?
Well,
Both.
the gRPC stuff is kind of on hold for right now. We're focusing on some other things, but no, I was just going to say we have done some exploration for how you can bring your own binary without having to fully rebuild and own Ratify.
That would be very interesting, yeah, because the things that I've looked at, obviously the plugin binaries are going to be more than 1.5 megs, and most folks don't go beyond 1 meg when they're storing things in secrets and config maps. So that's kind of out the window right there. So then the next 2 I looked at were, what we're talking about now, which is putting it inside the Ratify image, which has its own complexities. And then the third one was, hey, can I stick it in a sidecar and then share process spaces and then use commands to go out and look for a specific process in the other container and then create symlinks between the 2. I mean, I haven't been successful with it yet. Let's just say that, I guess.
So yes, so Matt Luker is gonna follow up on this. Matt, could you just put a link to that in this discussion that Susan has open on the screen right now? But that will at least give you some insight into our exploration and what we've kind of worked through. It's not to say that it is, golden stamp perfect, but it is at least going to give you a little bit more flexibility and that what I think you would be looking for. It's the next step to getting it a little bit more user friendly.
That's good news. Yeah, thank you. I'm interested to check that out, and I'll help where I can with trying it out. And then if and when gRPC daemon approach happens again or takes off, I'd like to be. I'm interested in that as well, because that was my thought was we should be looking at a way to throw this out there without having to tightly couple it to any kind of release. So.
Yeah, that is definitely something that our team has broached or discussed and is an ongoing. I would be happy to kind of make that a bit more public. Our focus has been a little more narrow right now, but that's awesome to hear, and we'll definitely be in touch.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, Susan. I think we've covered this one. The information you included there is along the same lines that I got from Akash, and that's the approach I'm going to take to integrate the plugin when I get to that level of testing.
Cool. Thanks so much, Kara. And Matt previously also asked about what is the execution mode path through used for. Just to confirm, Akash, like it is still going to be used for integrating with some of our internal scenarios. Is that correct? It's still being used.
Yes, yeah, we cannot get rid of it.
Could we talk about what those are? Noel was kind of the one representing this. Unfortunately, he's not here this week, so I'm kind of just bringing it to the table. But just from the context he gave me, it sounded like it was a feature that was used prior when like the Go routines were not in parallel, or sorry, the code was it was acting sequentially, and this was a way to like kind of short circuit it. But after they started running in parallel for the verifying, that all this thing is doing now is just setting the overall result to true. But if there's other things it's going to be doing in the future, I guess we just want to know what those were.
Oh, are you talking about the pass-through mode or the actual config policy provider where we actually return the overall result based off of some of those artifact type policies in the config?
Just the pass-through mode right now.
Okay. Yeah. So I can give a little bit of an overview on, so the pass-through mode is just so that all of the verifier reports that are generated, which if you're using the config policy provider, the final decision is made by parsing through that. Instead of having Ratify have that responsibility, you could send that whole payload upstream and have another party do the policy evaluation. So that's why the pass-through is needed. If that,
So, I think that makes sense, but like if so say if like Gatekeeper and the Rego is gonna like do that evaluation instead, is that kind of what you're saying?
yeah. So if the Rego would be the one doing the evaluation on the verifier report payload.
Yeah, so I think the point Noel was saying is like if that's gonna be the case, you don't need a pass-through mode to set the result to true because the Rego would be something would be evaluating all those results anyway. So that's kind of the driving like thing of like what maybe we should remove this completely.
I can add some clarification to that. As we've been doing some exploration, and we can circle up offline if this requires more conversation, especially once Noel is back. But it appears that with the addition of the Go routines, some of these short circuiting that pass-through mode not being turned on used to lead to that aggregation has kind of, it's not getting done anymore. And so all the pass-through, whether it's true or not, the only thing or whether it's set or not, I should say, the only thing that actually accomplishes or changes is that root level is success, whether it's true or actually being considered. Like the result being returned appears to be the full same result that you would get when its pass-through mode is not set. Now, if this is not intended behavior, or we need to like get into more detail and share screens and stuff, we can definitely just make note of it and pull Noel into a conversation. And however we want to, if you want to do that in Microsoft or in a more open way, we can accommodate either way. But that might be something that just deserves a little bit more attention.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see, Carl, like that it's kind of like from the execution perspective, it doesn't, we're gonna run all the verifiers and there's no short circuit that we apply anymore after the Go routine. I think definitely worth a discussion. Do you mind creating a tracking issue for this, and then we can continue the discussion from that thread?
Yes, definitely. And I'll point Noel to that so that he can fill in details and kind of do whatever to add detail. Because I'll be honest, I don't have firsthand experience. I've just been observing some of this. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I see one hand up from Sajay. Go ahead, Sajay.
I think you're muted, Sajay.
Thank you. So this was which PR is the one that, I mean, I think there's one PR that we need to merge, which is Noah's PR, right?
Yep.
And can we go ahead and merge it right now? Is there anything stopping?
The base branch is out of date. Like, I think that's the blocking.
That is, if that's it, I've just toggled the ability to do a merge commit. Can we just go ahead and do that? I can do that if we want to. That's what I'm asking.
Let me check Binbin's PR if that one is up to date. Okay, that one's also up. Yeah, if you do a toggle, we should be able to merge.
So I'm thinking we can go ahead and merge Noel's change, which is the artifact type, because notation RC1 got released yesterday and it should be fine. But before we cut the release, we just want to make sure, just sanity check if everything builds and does this right.
Yep, so we're going to cut the release and then do our manual validation on the release branch.
Okay, so then shall I go ahead and merge the changes?
Yeah, please do.
Also, could we merge the code QL ones if they haven't made it yet?
Okay, so here for Noel's change, I'll just do a merge commit for now. I know we don't want merge commits, but I think given the time, it's probably easier.
Yep. This one.
Okay,
Okay, now they're both merged. Yep, I think we should have everything we need for the beta 2 release, right?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, cool. I can create a branch after this call. And then Akasha and I would do some manual validation, and then we'll trigger the release maybe towards later this week, like tomorrow or Friday.
Thank you, Susan.
Yeah, I have added the I've started investigating the implementing Ratify's its own key vault retrieval certificate retrieval logic. There is some benefits to provide more flexibility. So I've started a design, not a design, like more just a document to capture some of the assumptions and customer scenarios. And I thought if we have time today, we can review some of that and just to make sure everyone on the call, we are aligned on the customer scenarios. So we've been talking about introducing a new Ratify CRD for the certificates. So today we use the secret store CSI driver, and two of the limitation that we ran into is the customer have to specify each object in the key vault. So it's not very convenient because if they have 10 certificates, they'll have to list out the certificate name. So instead, we want the customer, we think the ideal customer experience should be the customer should specify a key vault URL and we'll just pull down all the certificates. So this implementing our own CRD would provide more convenience for the customer. And it also provides more flexibility in the, like when you need to define a new key vault URL, like with the secret CSI store, a pod restart would be required because it's doing the mounting of the cert into a, like if you want to change the mount location, a pod restart is required. So we're thinking for the new CRD implementation, if we kept the certificates in memory, then for any new key vault URLs, we would able to just fetch that into memory. Does anyone have any feedback on this item, like removing dependency on secret store driver? Cool. I will move on to the assumptions. Sorry, did someone say something? I didn't hear the.
So the key vault implementation is vendor agnostic?
Each cloud vendor would have to implement the key vault fetching logic. So the interface would be cloud agnostic. So then I've captured that as a requirement, just like our auth provider. There'll probably be implementations required to like do token exchange and like maybe
So,
the key vault.
yeah, so what it sounds like is that access to the key vault would be done through some workload identity piece, and then the plumbing for how the information is pulled from key vault would be vendor specific.
Yes. I imagine pulling from an Azure Key Vault versus the AWS Key Vault probably would be require different implementation.
I mean, it's somewhat similar to the workload identity work that we did for the auth providers as well.
Yeah, so I believe the secret store driver today probably provides the implementation for different clouds. They have a property in their CRD to specify the provider. So I imagine we'll have something similar, like you'll say which provider you're targeting, and then you'll provide the identities and the key vault properties. Does that sound okay, Jimmy?
Well, I'm trying to figure out, I mean, we're on the hook then to write a provider for a key vault, and then that provider will get loaded as part of the Ratify configuration, just like we do with the auth providers. And then we'll just specify that in this resource then, is what it sounds like, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I've captured some assumptions that I can think of right now. So I'm assuming that each verifier only needs to read validation certificate from a single key vault. So is that true? Is it typical that all the validation certificate lives in a single key vault, or do we need to support reading from multiple key vaults?
So why would we want to limit it? I guess I mean, I don't know off the top of my head a use case where we would have to read multiple key vaults, but I mean, I think it's worth exploring.
Worth exploring, like have an implementation that would allow for multiple key vaults if needed.
Yeah, and then I guess my next question would be, what is the sequence for accessing this key vault? Like, is that every single verification that the verifier is doing, or is this cached, or how's?
Maybe I can give some context as to why this discussion even happened. So right now, when we enable Ratify, we have to bring in the secret store, like on the Azure side, it's an add-on, so it needs to get installed along with the workload identity and things like that.
Mhm.
So that creates more dependency on components. And one of the feedback that we got was we want to be able to specify just a key vault ID, and Ratify takes care of everything without creating yet another mount volume and a dependency in the whole chain. So that's where this was
okay.
coming from. So I think we can start with one key, but the interface remains open enough for multiple keys. I don't know whether we will remove the support for CSI. Is that where we are, Susan, at this point, or this would be on top of that, or are we evaluating only one option here?
Yeah, I think that's an option, like keeping that you can load from disk, right? As well as loading from key vault.
Okay, so we can, I think the way you configure it will determine whether you want to load from disk directly and you mount using the CSI driver, or you use the CRD to load the key, and there is a workload identity that the provider can go read the keys and load it. The reason is notation and now supports passing in a set of trust policy and trust store that through memory without using the disk itself. So that was one of the things that I think was being asked. Also, rotation of keys become hard because if you rotate the keys, how do you want to keep it simple within that workflow? I think both options are there, but removing the CSI driver as an add-on dependency was what was the key driver for this.
So this sounds like it would happen when Ratify boots. And then if there were any changes, we would handle that through watching or?
For the, yes, I think that's what the assumption is, that the
Or polling?
Yeah, it will be polling.
Okay.
It wouldn't be on a hot path. Like when the verification happens, I don't think going and pulling the secrets would be scalable.
No. That's what that was my concern. So, I mean, it seems like it's a implementation detail that would be in the provider.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for the context, Ajay. And that answers one of my questions. Like I was wondering if we're going to support the mounting scenario as well as the key. So for now, we will support both. So I imagine in the verifier CRD, if the customer specified a path to disk, would we prioritize if they specified birth, which one do we prioritize? Not prioritize, which one would we use? Do we allow specifying if the customer specified birth? Should we just return an error, just like we don't know which one you want to use?
What is the CRD looking like right now?
So this is the notary verifier CRD.
Right, and that has verification certs in it, right?
Yeah, that's what we currently have.
And what's the proposal for the certificate CR?
So, we're out. One of the option is to embed all the keyword properties into the verifier CRD. That's option one. But then I want to make sure like whatever we build, we support all the verifiers like notary and cosign.
Mhm.
And if we embedded everything, like it becomes too monolithic. So I think I prefer option 2 where we define maybe like a cert store CRD. This CRD currently looks very similar to the secret store CSI driver. And we somehow reference like this metadata have like, these are just samples. The CRD cert store CRD have metadata with the name, so notary certificate, and we somehow reference the cert store from the verifier.
Sounds good. I think we can float this with Rita and gatekeeper folks as to how they want to think about this, and getting some feedback from Anish and folks who wrote the CSI driver would also be useful here. So let's look at the one option. I think I see Akash's hand. So
yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to float an idea. Could we get rid of the verification certs and just have it all be providers? So if you want to use a mounted version, you'd have like a default mounting provider that could do the kind of abstract away the actual cert mounting portion. So from the notary verifier perspective, it's just communicating with different providers, and the provider itself, we'd have a default mounting provider, which would provide the certs, load them from memory or disk, and handle that.
So you want two custom resources. One is a disk-based resource, which is like the CSI driver, and the other one would be a key vault resource that provides you the same set of certs. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that would be, so by default, if you don't specify, if you don't want to use the in-memory implementation, it would default to like the disk-based approach, and the disk is just is another provider. In that case, maybe we don't have a separate CRD for that. I guess we could discuss implementation for that, but totally separating concerns so that the notation verifier is only dealing with the certificate provider, and then we would have a separate provider for the disk certs.
I see where you're going.
Yeah.
How do you see the cosign providers knowing which cert to pick up? Or the cosign verifier needs to know which cert to pick up, right?
Yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah, we probably need to figure that out.
Hey, it could be like I mentioned. I'm fine with that. Like, but we just need to probably just think through how do we bind file store or a dynamic provider like a search store with the corresponding verifiers. That's the one piece that might be missing. And but I like the fact of being able to have a default one, which is the file store, so that you don't have to specify it. But I think the paths are there so that we can, each verifier gets its own set of certs, right?
Yeah, I can
Yep.
definitely explore that. Thank you, Akash. It'll be like similar to how config map, the config file, if the CRDs didn't exist, what's our default, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, my other question is, so if the customer specified a key vault URL and we just by default pull the latest cert, how do we support the rotation scenario? Like, let's say they rotated the certificate, but the images are still signed with the previous version.
Is this that the cert, an old cert is valid? They're
Yeah.
signed with an older cert.
Yeah, what would be the typical customer rotation workflow? Like both of them would be valid, right? Like the previous one and the newest one that they just rotated.
I think that's a good use case to make sure we download all enabled certificates, right?
Yeah.
From Key Vault side, it's easy for me to say, but I don't know for AWS what would be the scenario. So I think a reference implementation like all enabled certs are valid as far as the verifier goes. I don't see how people would rotate things, especially signing certificates, very quickly. It's possible, but it should be an edge case where you go and decide to rotate your signing cert, and it's typically a year or two or even longer sometimes. But if you have very short-lived certs like 180 days, then you anticipate that if the cert is enabled, there'll be a subset, maybe 5 to 10 certs that would be okay. So here's the other thing. We've been talking about how to have trust policies that have different certs for different, let's say, sources. Let's say Docker Hub images signed with one cert, MCR images, the Microsoft Container Registry signed with one, and your registry has one key. So I see that we need to at least have 2 to 3 keys that we can somehow configure to validate, and all these certs are actually valid, but in different scopes. So the trust policy will have maybe Docker Hub Nginx has to be signed with one key, and so forth. That's the scenario that I see where multiple key vaults might be used. But calling out how they would hydrate this is important. Like, how will customers get the certs on the node? And making this easier for them, like, yeah, just move the public key into your key vault, and Ratify takes care of all the loading of the certs. At least it makes a good use case. That's what David was coming from.
Yeah. Cool. So we're in agreement going with option 2, defining a new cert store CRD and referencing it from the verifier CRD. And our next step is like, probably I'll do some more investigation and we'll run it through with Rita's team. Cool. Yeah, I haven't done much detailed investigation, so that's all I have for the cert store CRD. And Sade, do you have a better name for cert store, Ratify cert store? Do you have any other recommended CRD name?
I think we should talk to. I think Anish might be a good person. He named
Yes.
us. CSI. I don't know where Rita's team is probably the best people who can help you with the names. Yeah, and keeping it obvious is what I would say. Like, if people see this, they should understand what it is. As long as we can do that, I think that's easy. Oh, quick question. Did you merge the meeting notes PR already?
I did, yes. And then the next step would be to remove all of this and replace it with a link.
I can do that.
Okay, great. And I see Matt posted a question.
Yeah.
It's Jimmy asking.
It was Jimmy. Okay, I didn't see the. I couldn't recognize the voice to the face. So
Yeah.
I found the doc. It's in like a non-public repo, but I can just pull out the markdown file and send it over, and it kind of lays out. I think the probably one that you'd be interested in would be just volume mounting, and then putting your binary there with using Docker. That's, I think, the use case. There's
So-
3 in there, so.
So are we, is it 2 different containers sharing volumes? Is that what we're talking about? Because that's the direction I was headed.
Okay, yeah, so in this particular instance, it was kind of more generic. It was just a sample of spinning up an image with a volume mount, because you can pass in your plugins directory. So then you could pass it into your volume mount, and then you could just, from there, you could just make an HTTP request out to verify.
Yeah, but your volume mount at that point is on the node, right?
Correct, yep,
Okay.
yes. So this,
I mean,
would have been like,
that's something else that I looked at as well, like
Okay.
using like a daemon set to distribute these things onto nodes, but okay.
Have we considered bundling up your plugins as similar to what OPA policies are doing? Like, just put it in the registry and have Ratify read these binaries and lay them out as a
we have that on our backlog as like a talking point. Yeah, pulling down plugins. So we have that exact line item on ours to think about. I think Noel added that one on there as well.
Sounds good.
So I mean, what I think is going to happen, depending on how many plugins we get and how much activity between the plugin lifecycle and Ratify lifecycle, I think we're going to start to see some shifting and people going off and doing their own thing, trying to get the right plugin they want in the right Ratify version that they want. And so, I mean, that's the reason I brought this up. So, I mean, anything you can share would be great. I think I'm also interested in the like I said earlier, the gRPC thing, but pulling down the plugins, that would be interesting as well.
Because that model is followed in OPA. The OPA bundles are actually distributed as OC artifacts.
Yeah. I mean, that's something brand new. I mean, they've been doing bundle service forever, but the OCI thing is brand new for them within the last year or so, I guess. But yeah, that would be interesting.
Yeah, because it'd be easy for you to distribute your plugin because it's source, right? I mean, it's the bundle, the binary that you want to install, and you can digest pin it so that you don't get some random version also. And Ratify can maybe have the plumbing to pull down a dynamic plugin and put it in the right directory also. And that's a small shim that we can write because there's enough and more code for acquiring registry content already.
So the only, if I put my purist hat on, then pulling down the binary or the tar file or tarball, whatever you get from where this binary is stored, pulling that artifact down and putting it into Ratify violates the immutability of the
I would digest pin it. I would not say pull by tag or anything like that. You potentially know that the plugin is pinned to a specific version of that plugin, and when we download it, we should probably have a way to verify that the digest of the content is exactly that what you request.
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly do that as well. All I'm saying is that the idea is that I guess the way that I looked at it was it would be more about loosening up the coupling. So if I were going to say, hey, I want to pull down this version of the plugin, and then here's the MD5 that I want to check it against, I want both of those pieces to come in as a configuration and not
Right.
something. Yeah. So
Agreed.
yeah, if they come in as a configuration, then we're still kind of, it's not as bad. You know, we get loose coupling and we get a little bit of there's a trade-off there that we are adding another binary, you know, to the image after it's been built, you know,
Right.
inside the container. So
Yeah, and that's why I was of the opinion that the hash of whatever you're pulling in has to go as config, and you're not kind of like asking it to pull a random binary on the fly with a tag or something like that. So if you have the right model, maybe it's okay. Again, this is one opportunity for investigation, not is one of the ideas.
no, it's good. It's a good way to take a look at it. I mean, that's something that if it's right up there with putting it in the image, and then also it's right up there with gRPC and stuff.
Cool. Yeah, just thinking, do we want to just add a comment, Jimmy? Like, will you be exploring that, or you doing the mounting, trying the mounting first, and then what should we just create the like pooling plugin from registry? Like, is there an idea feature?
So I think,
of-
well, so I think, you know, like I said before, I started going down the road of looking at different options, right? Most of the plugins are going to be too big to store in secrets or config maps. So then it's back to where can we put it? And so I can put together a decision doc of where I think we're at. The two that I think that are the most viable right now, with the third one being gRPC is way, you know, that's farther away, and I'm not sure everyone would want to do that anyways. But the two that I think are viable right now are sticking it in the image when it's built, you know, or like Sajay just, you know, came up with, downloading it and then using that, you know, the identification of the artifact to be downloaded, as well as the checksum value would be part of the configuration for when the container boots. I think those two, I'm definitely going to test putting it inside the Ratify image because I have to do that to do internal testing. And if I can get to it, I'm also going to look at let's just call it the OPA bundle model, because that's essentially what we're talking about is, you know, pulling down some type of tarball, I would assume, and verifying it. And not only verifying it, but, you know, I don't want to get down this rabbit hole, but when you talk about the way that OPA does it, you know, they sign these, and, you know, you get a jot that you compare. I mean, I'm not sure we want to model it the same way, but I mean, that model already exists. So I can at least take a look at that, because I've built my own bundle servers before. So
Yeah, I think the validation of the bundle itself, because if we go always by hash of the content, it might be okay. I mean, you're trusting the hash of the image anyway. So if you want an additional layer on top of it that the plugin has to be signed, you could do that also. But I just want to make sure that
I think we want to look at that as well. I mean, yeah, and then I just thought of something else that, you know, kind of falls right in line with that, and that is, we're talking about configuring Ratify and having it come up with this, you know, but how do we handle changes? You know, so I mean, to me, I guess we would just reconfigure and bounce Ratify. Is that what we're saying?
that's the model right now.
Okay. All right.
Because my hope is that it's graceful on the Kubernetes side, right?
Yeah, I mean, since the way that OPA does it is they actually will, you know, they'll sign it, and then you have this, you know, base cert that you can look at multiple signatures, but they also use the e tags, right?
Mhm.
So you can tell if you've got to download a new one or not. So that's long term. That's something to take. a look at.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I see what you're saying. So the loader of the bundle actually polls for updates.
Yeah, I mean, it'll check.
Okay.
It'll
It's
check
not-
the E tag, and if the E tag is the same, then it's not going to pull it, right? And
I see. I think for Ratify, maybe I was hoping with, let's start with, we can configure it with a digest, and then we can.
yeah. We could crawl before crawl before we walk. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you wanted to have a dynamic, so okay, so we're getting into another spec that I've been writing, which is called a patch manifest, which is very early in on OCI land, which is about if a digest is passed, how do you know? So you're talking about E tags, right? Like the assumption of that is you have a digest and you pin your stuff to the digest, but you do want maybe your runtimes to be able to look at something else and then decide that, okay, there is an update to it, and I can choose whether I want the update or not. So that's orthogonal to this discussion. But long story short, I think configuration driven is what we can start with. And then if you want to have a little bit more dynamic nature of loading the plugins and it becomes a requirement, then it's definitely something we can change.
Yep, I agree. So yeah, the two that I'm probably going to look at the most then are, one, I have to use image, packing it into the image. And then the second one that I would like to take a look at would be, can I piggyback off of how OPA does it, and you pull it down as, the Ratify image or container boots. So yeah. Makes
sense. And I mean, we should even think about if we want to do images per provider at some point in time. I think I'll bring in Lucky and other folks who have more, who've kind of shipped on the Kubernetes side to discuss like what is the model we want to do so that other people can still bundle it, or you have your own distribution of this for AWS and other providers as needed.
Can you clarify, Sajay? Like, what do you mean per different image for the provider? Is it the Ratify image or the plugin image?
Could be both. So if AWS wanted to own their own plugin and distribution and things like that, and you want to tell customers to get, hey, AWS enabled Ratify, right? And they just kind of like pull it from there. So we don't have to worry about it. And they get control on how they patch it and how they actually publish it as well. And that way we can still reference in the Ratify chart with some flags saying for AWS use this image. That might be easier also.
Interesting.
But I want to bring in Lucky because this is multi-cloud, and how do you want to keep this agnostic enough? We have a similar problem for Azure, right? And we're going to have to host our own version of Ratify for Azure also. So it'd be good for a common solution for everybody.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that's internal questions that we've had as well. And we're kind of on the fence as to which way we'd like to go. We want the flexibility, but we don't want obviously we don't want the responsibility,
Right.
So, but yeah, I think there's further conversation that we'd like to get in on with you about this as well.
I'll raise this with today's folks and figure out what's a good model. I think we need some PM help also here to streamline how everybody's going to go and make it stable, but you have flexibility that you can patch for your customers without having to wait on our community meeting to patch something, right?
And it doesn't necessarily have to be mutually exclusive, right? So my thought was, if the binaries, let's just say the plugin binaries are known and released at the time that the Ratify image gets built.
Oh yeah, we could compose it.
That we can compose it in there, and then we could also include the configuration to have it go and find the new one if a new one exists. So that's what. Yeah.
I think the Kubernetes SIG upstreams all do that, right? Like they have multiple projects and they all kind of compose together in the end. I think it's fair.
Yep, it sounds pretty common.
I'm glad we're kind of getting to these kind of conversations. Awesome. Okay, I think we're over time also. Sorry.
Yeah, Jimmy, well, we can use this, the issue for 6A as the discussion thread. Just let us know how you go.
Yeah, the next couple of days I'll be testing. I can't guarantee that I'll get the testing in before I go on leave, but I'll try.
Thank you. Again, I know that we kind of wanted to release this, but if there is problems, I probably gonna ask the team to lean towards beta 3. If there's an urgent patch and all that, we can do that. I don't think that's a blocker, but it's good to have a release so that you have some baseline.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly.
All right.
So Susan, last one. I think folks can drop off. I just chatted with Jason Hall for the 6-store string. He asked, can any of you join like the 6-store Slack and ask, hey, what's the artifact type string that you want to use? The question you can ask is, how does the 6-store team plan to use the referrers API? What's the artifact type there? And
Okay.
sounds good.
Is it a different Slack? What Slack is it?
6-store has their own Slack.
Okay, I'll find it.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Sanjay. Thank you, everyone. Jimmy, I hope you enjoy the family bonding time. We'll see you when you get back.
Take care, folks. And best of luck for the release.
Thanks.
All right, thank you very much for the conversation.
Thanks, everyone.
Mm.